Hi, welcome to One on the Page. I'm Scott. This is 5-Year Battle PG Wodehouse. Let's get started. This should be the years 1947 through 1951. I've been postponing this for quite a bit now, and I've been doing my Stephen King short story ranking because there have been a few books of Wodehouse's that I have not read yet, including two books in the 1947 through 1951 time period. The books that I haven't got to, I don't necessarily know their quality, but they're generally hard to get. Some of them are nonfiction, so they're not always likely to be his top books, but I still need to read them. I just haven't gotten around to doing that. So instead of continuing to postpone 1947 through 1951 before I move on, I'm going to skip that for right now. I'm going to do a 5-year time period that I have read all the books in, and that is 1962 through 1966. We only have 5 books this period, so let's go ahead and get started with them. The first book is Service with a Smile. It was published in 1962. It is a Blandings Castle novel. I think that Wodehouse, for example, with the Jeeves and Wooster books, kind of has a level quality to them throughout his time, like over 50 years at least of publishing. I don't know if that's always the case with Blandings Castle. It's Fred Twistleton, uh, also known as Uncle Fred, who essentially has his own series, but he does in that series also appear in Blandings Castle books. I think that Uncle Fred is in 4 books plus short stories. I could be wrong about that. Uh, Uncle Fred is not one of my favorite characters. In the first book in which he appears in Blandings Castle, Galahad is also in there, and the two of them share some similarities, but all in all, I think Uncle Fred is a poor copy of Galahad. Uh, Uncle Fred is also the type of character that I don't enjoy in the same vein as Euchridge, uh, who is a schemer, although he is obviously much better off to do than Euchridge. It basically has to do with more romance. Myra Shoemaker wants to marry a curate. Of course, Connie or Constance, uh, no way because he's a curate. Also, in addition to Uncle Fred, we also have Duke Dunstable. I have said in a podcast that was published a couple of months ago, I believe, I think April or May of 2024, in which I specified who's my least favorite character in Wodehouse. It is not Duke Dunstable, but it could be. This guy's awful. I know he appears in at least 2 Blandings Castle novels. I do not remember whether or not he appears in other works, and that may be the only reason he's not my least favorite, is that he doesn't have as much range as this other least favorite character. Uh, Also, he plans to steal the Empress of Blandings, Lord Emsworth pig, because he thinks Lord Emsworth is crazy, and he's going to sell this pig. Uh, uh, there, there are just so many unlikable characters in this book for me. Not so many. There's so much about the book about these unlikable characters. So much about Dunstable and so much about Uncle Fred and the other Blandings Castle characters that generally would play a big part in here. To kind of take a back seat, like I said, I don't believe there's any Galahad in here. There's too much Constance for my own liking. Uh, I don't dislike her in the same way I dislike Dunstable or my least favorite character, but generally the ants in Woodhouse are not fun and they're better served with a light touch in the books, and she's just in it too much. But for now, this is number one. The second book, published in 1963, is Stiff Upper Lip Jeeves. Of course, a Jeeves and Wooster book. It is a novel. Novels for Jeeves and Wooster I enjoy more than short stories. The short stories tend to get repetitive, and I think I think Bertie Wooster needs to have a little room to spread. One thing I don't like is that Jeeves not liking Bertie's clothing plays a big part in this. I kind of felt like we were moving away from that a little bit, or maybe I'm just misremembering it. Maybe it doesn't happen until later books. But one thing I liked about the novels as compared to the short stories is like almost every short story is like Jeeves throwing a hissy fit because Bertie is wearing something Jeeves doesn't approve of. But that's also the case in here, and it plays a part at the beginning and at the end. Jeeves has been away acting as a temporary butler for his aunt, I believe. There's somebody there who wants to hire Jeeves on. There's, of course, romance with Gussie Fink Noddle, who is engaged to Madeline Bassett. He is often engaged and not engaged and looking at other women. Bertie tries to fix up their relationship, and we know how that's going to go with Bertie. The main problem is that Madeline is trying to make Gussie follow a vegetarian diet. There's also Roderick Spoke, who has Robert Spode, who has appeared in previous Jeeves and Wooster stories. And so all of this is basically goes around, and I think Wodehouse does this better in Jeeves and Wooster books, better than almost, well, definitely better than any of his other series books. I think even more so than some of the better Blanding Castle ones. I do believe that there are some standalone books in which he does it better, but in which he just gets a tempest going and things happening and happening and happening, and somehow it's always Bertie who uh, gets it in the end because Bertie's just too good for this world. Uh, Not the best Jeeves and Wooster book, still a very good book. I'm gonna rank this at number one for the moment. The next book is Frozen Assets, published in 1964. It is a standalone novel. There are characters in here who have appeared in other works, such as oh, I'm blanking on the man's name. I believe Lord Tilbury appears in here. Yeah, Lord Tilbury, Percy Pilbeam, I believe. Yeah, Percy. It is about a Jerry Shoesmith who meets a woman in France, as is one is wont to do in Wodehouse novel. He falls in love with her, but then, of course, he has to go to England. She is engaged. Uh, I believe her brother is one of his best friends. There's a hilarious scene at the beginning in a French police station. Probably one of the funniest scenes, I think, in a Wodehouse book. This is another one, as I was talking about in Stiff Upper Lip Jeeves, where things just get in that tempest. I think it's done even better in here. This is one of my favorite Wodehouse books. I have not given I have not given a ranking to all the Woodhouse books I read. I've only started ranking them this year, ranking books that I read this year. This was one of a few that I've read this year that I've given a 5-star to. In a large part, is that there is a minor character in here, an attorney. There's a minor character in here, attorney Bunting, who works for Lord Tilbury, who talks about his stomach ailments that he really does have, and about his previous time acting when he was a younger man. And he really, at least for me, he steals the book for me. Probably one of my favorite characters in Wodehouse. Uh, I know that he does appear in other works, but I don't think he appears in many, and not to as large a presence as he does here. Not that this one is a huge presence, but it is memorable for me. This one is definitely number one for right now for me. Like I said, 5-star rating for me. I love this book. This book is awesome. I don't necessarily see it a lot of places pinpointed as one of his best books. I think, personally, in large part because people tend to stick to the series books, the Jeeves and Wooster and Blanding's Castle books. But if you haven't read it, definitely should give it a try. The next book, published in 1965, is another Blanding's Castle novel. It is Galahad at Blanding, so we do know that Galahad does appear in it. The thing about this novel is that I don't feel like Lord Emsworth appears as much in this book as he does in other Blanding Castle books. As far as reoccurring characters, prominent reoccurring characters, I like Lord Emsworth very much. He's always funny and just a treat to read. So him not playing a huge role in here kind of I don't enjoy as much, but Galahad is not awful, but I think he works better as a side character, kind of propelling the story along. And I think he just does take too much of a role in here. This is more Galahad sticking his nose in young people's love life, people trying to marry other people off. There's basically a MacGuffin, in this case, a letter that people are trying to get. Uh, it's a decent book. I do think, as far as Blanding's Castle books, it does kind of more near the bottom, I think, than others. Uh, I am going to actually here put it at the bottom. I do think, because of the presence of Lord Emsworth, that Service with a Smile probably goes up a little bit more than this one, just a touch. The last book, published in 1966, is Plum Pie. It is a collection of short stories. There is no basically overarching theme, no there's no character consistency through the stories. There are several characters from different series and some standalone stories. There's a Jeeves and Wooster story, uh, Jeeves and the Greasy Bird. It's a decent story, I think, but it. And I say this as somebody who has done podcasts about all the Jeeves and Wooster story collections, and I have done them all. I think there's 4 of them. I have done them all basically over the space of a year. So I'm a little biased in that I don't enjoy Jeeves and Wooster short stories as much as I might have if I spaced them out a little bit. So a little bias on my part. Uh, There's a golf story about somebody who gets hypnotized to play differently. There's a Euclid stories. Again, more bias for me. Not a big fan of Euclid, so uh, I enjoyed Euclid in his only novel that he appeared in which he was more of a secondary character. I don't enjoy Euclid when he takes a prominent role. Of course, there are a couple of Bingo Little stories. There's George and Alfred, which is a Mr. Mulliner story, which was also, before being rewritten, a Reggie Pepper story. I think I like the Reggie Pepper version better. Mr. Mulliner stories, I don't dislike them. I think their quality is all over the place, and this is not a story I enjoy. I don't even enjoy it that much when it's Reggie Pepper in there. There's a story about a man wants to get married, trying to get uh, his fiance uncle to stop smoking. There's Life with Freddy, which is a story featuring Freddie Threepwood. Although Blanding's Castle doesn't play a prominent role in the story, it's still entertaining. And I think there's another story that I ranked on. There is another Blanding's Castle story, Sticky Wicket at Blanding's, which is fine. Plum Pie overall is fine. There are better story collections. As I mentioned, biased towards the Jeeves and Worcester stories. Not a Bingo Little fan. I'm not a Euclid fan. So I'm, when it comes to Wodehouse at least, I'm also much more of a fan of his novels than his short stories. So it should not be a huge surprise that Plum Pie is coming in at last. It is number 5. So got the countdown. Coming in at number 5 is Plum Pie. Coming in at number 4 is Galahad at Blandings. Coming in at number 3 is Service with a Smile. Coming in at number 2 is Stiff Upper Lip Jeeves. And coming in at number 1, Frozen Assets. Just a great book. Definitely, I think, is going to be in the running for, well, it's obviously going to be in the running, but I think it has a very good chance to get close to the end, if not be in the finals. I love this novel. Again, 5 star. I have given other 5 stars to Wodehouse books, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. Uh, Next week, I will, of course, go back to doing my Stephen King ranking, but it's my hope. I'm not going to make a promise because I shouldn't do that, obviously. It is my hope 2 weeks from today, I will post another 5-year battle PG Wodehouse video. I won't promise that it will be in chronological order. So until then, please like and subscribe, leave a comment, and I'll talk to you later.